Now, we all remember that very famous Australian tourism promotion video with the very good-looking young woman in a bikini saying, "Where the bloody hell are you?" as the catchphrase. Well, that is what our next guest has been asking the same question of local government. They've been largely missing in action when it comes to a COVID-19 response, in his opinion. These are the words from our Farmers Weekly's recently appointed new columnist, economist, Cameron Bagrie, who joins us now on Sarah's Country. Firstly, Mr. Bagrie, how is lockdown looking from the very luxurious place, from the pictures that you've been sending me?
Oh, yeah, I'm lucky. I had a pretty good home office set up. I guess in my private life, I'm also a bit of an introvert outside of sort of work. So I've been having an awful lot of fun sort of texting, messaging extroverted friends and asking them, "Are you okay? Is there anything I can do to help?"
Oh, I tell you what, the farming friends, like the old Fred Dagg video, going to town once every 6 months. They're quite okay with this isolation. They got it down pat.
Yeah, well, I've just been going for a couple of walks a day. It's been quite pleasurable to walk, not on the footpath. You can walk down the main street and sort of getting back to a little bit of basic stuff. It's quite refreshing.
You haven't been for a 20-minute drive in your high-ace van?
No, nah. I might have been for the old bike ride. Probably a little bit outside of the border, but didn't get caught.
Yeah, sure. So you're trying to pull the heads out of the sand from our councillors at the moment. Can you explain more about this?
Well, let's step back and have a look at what we're going through as an economy. It's the deepest downturn I've ever seen. This comparison's been made to the 1930s. I think that's a little bit off the deep end, but let's be brutally honest. But this one is really going to hurt. The good news is, policymakers, like the Reserve Bank, has brought out the bazookas. So has the government. Wage subsidy schemes, you name it, they are writing a hell of a lot of checks. And that's appropriate that they write those checks because the government's got a big balance sheet. Small businesses, households do not. So when you go through economic stress testing times, you lean on those entities that have got the balance sheet, got the cash flow, got the liquidity. So the first port of call has been central government. But there's another group of entities out there at the moment that have also got pretty good balance sheet. It's called local government. Your local government has got assets of $150 billion. Now, to be fair, they don't have the same flexibility in regard to debt that central government has got, but they've still got some leeway on those balance sheets. And I'm just rolling my eyes at the moment when I see talk out of some councils that rates are going to be moving up in the next financial year. Like, you are kidding me. Right, the number is zero. They'd be thinking a lot more proactively about how they can support farmers, households, businesses, as opposed to hitting them with higher costs when businesses out there at the moment, they're in survival mode.
There is a lot of infrastructure spend that still needs to continue, though, particularly water infrastructure in a lot of urban areas. But then at the same time, Cameron, there's probably a lot of slush funds that don't need to be used, like boosting, tourism to our international markets is one of them. Is it just a bit of shuffling of the decks of cards to ensure the spend is going to places that we need to employ people the most?
Well, there's different stages in regard to what we're going to need. Well, the first stage, what we need at the moment, it's all about crisis management. And that's where the government, leading off their balance sheet, liquidity, working capital facilities, them supporting the banks is absolutely critically important. But the last thing we want to be doing at the moment is hitting people with more costs. So once again, rates, the magic number is now zero. Sunlight's a great form of disinfectant. I'll be encouraging farmers out there, if they see any council out there that's got a positive number on the table, put it on the table. You get on social media, let's get it out there and air it so they can come under public scrutiny. But what we're also going to need on the other side, both out of central government and local government, is a bit of an economic plan. We've got to find $17 billion to replace the lost income out of the tourism sector. Because the tourism sector, international-wise, is going to take a long time to go back to the way it was. We're going to need to put some sacred cows on the table, so to speak, in regard to economic policy. Some of the political ideology in regard to what we see out of central government and local government, they're going to have to park it. The top priority over the coming 12, 24, 36 months is going to be something pretty simple. It's about getting people into paid work, because we do not want the unemployment rate, which looks like it's going to go double digit, to remain there for a long time, because that's going to settle a lost generation of kids. How do we get people back into paid work? Well, you've got to get growth. How do you get growth? Well, the government, local government, can spend various money on infrastructure. They'll be right to pull that lever, but they've also got to rattle the cage in what we call microeconomics. Those are those little things that central government and local government can do to either make life difficult or easier for the business community to flourish. And we're going to need them pulling those levers to make life easier over the coming 5 years.
Right, I know there's actually a few members of the Bailey's Country team watching right now, Cameron, from the comments I'm seeing here below. And I've been working with them up until the lockdown to find that perfect property on the peninsula. But the old man tells me just to sit and wait it out. What's your advice on the direction for rural and lifestyle property?
Well, I can't provide financial advice, but I can give you a bit of an idea in regard to what I'm looking at myself. I think Christmas is around the corner. If I look at every asset class at the moment, we were off to the races in 2019. We were seeing a bit of a reset across dairy prices, but a big gap between the vendors and the buyers. What's happened is that the price of risk, or people have not been compensated for risk in regard to buying the assets at the prices they've been prepared to pay. We've been in an incredible economic environment where yields, returns have just been driven down into the ground. What we're going through at the moment is what I call a big reset. That the price of risk is going to go up because we've had that economic shock. Now we need to think about, to make sure that when we put money on the table, buy assets, we're going to be compensated for that risk on the other side. What does that mean? Asset values across every asset class are going to go down. Now that's going to be hard luck for owners of assets, but for people that have been sitting on capital cash on the sidelines, watching in disbelief the past couple of years, well, once again, Christmas is around the corner because you're going to start to see some realistic valuations come back into the market.
We've got a lot of comments here on the Facebook. Tony Watson said, thank you so much. Great explanations, Cameron. Michael Ross thinks that we need to think a bit bigger than a recovery in 1 year of our $17 billion tourism income. And to think beyond annual timeframes?
Well, if you look at the tourism sector after the global financial crisis, it took until about 2014 before it got back to 2008 levels. And this downturn is more pronounced. We're going to see some really big, major thematic shifts out of this out the other side. People are talking the global economy is going to go through a V-shaped outcome. A V-shaped outcome is coming in hard and then rocketing right back out the other side. Well, it's not going to be a V. We're certainly sliding down one side of the V. When we go back to work, self-isolation ends. Yes, we're going to climb partially up the other side. But a lot of businesses are not going to be around. They're going to be turning out the lights. The tourism sector is going to be a dead duck for a long time. We're going to get into a real hard slog sort of dogfight, I think, for a couple of years. It's going to take New Zealand probably 3 years to get back to the same level of activity we had at the start of 2020. What can we do to accelerate that? Well, the government's going to spend a lot of money on infrastructure to help with growth out the other side. But what we need is what's called microeconomic reform. Once again, that's getting in there and pulling those levers that are going to help business, farmers and households out.
And just lastly, our other large exporting industry, and particularly our dairy sector, had a very positive GDT this week. And looks that we're all looking to it to be a real saviour. How, when we're so exposed to our international markets and them rebounding, do you give concern to? Or not?
If you look at the historical pattern, when global growth is weakening, the trend for commodity prices tends to be pretty clearly down. And the New Zealand dollar acts as a bit of a buffer on the other side because the New Zealand dollar tends to weaken. Abstracting from last night's auction, generally speaking, dairy prices have been falling. But the numbers we've been seeing, given the global scene, I think have actually been incredibly encouraging. And they actually tell me that the market's broadly in balance. But the $1 million question here is that what happens as we really get into the whites of the eyes of what's going on around the globe, and consumers stop to spend. What is then the outlook for commodity prices? I think we're going to see a little bit more weakness on the other side. But offside to that, or the offset, is that, look, in the current environment, just extrapolate out what we're seeing at the supermarkets in New Zealand, and be pretty damn pleased that we put food on the global stage. Because economics 101 for any government around the globe at the moment, when you're facing these sort of challenges, you're telling people to stay home, this sort of stuff, social distancing, make sure they've got access to food. What do we put on the global stage? We put food.
And access to Netflix. Cameron, to close, we want to know, you said you're a self-acclaimed introvert. You must have a stack of recommendations for binge watching this Easter.
I've been a bit of a penchant for Vikings.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Apparently, we've got 3% Viking in us. My sister did one of those online DNA things, so I might get stuck into watching that. Talk to the old ancestors.
I've got a little bit of that heritage in me as well. That's been a good series, and there's been a bit of an update as well. So more of them have been provided.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
This is Sarah's Country.